Hey, Julian. Okay, so I got your question about is prime. You want to figure out how to use a while loop instead of a for loop. Before we start that, though, in general, you want to avoid using instance variables unless there's some data that you need to have in all of your, or in more than one method, and you don't have a clean way of passing it back and forth. That's kind of vague, but that'll become clearer as you start working through more of these. So basically, the typical way to initialize in a for loop, to initialize a variable, is you declare it inside the for loop like that. And we don't need this x equals 0 in here. I'll just get rid of that. So this is just a little bit of cleaning up. So that compiles. Again, the typical way to do this is, and whenever you do anything like that, any cleaning up or anything, go ahead and test it again and make sure that things are still working. 4 should be false, and 7 should be true. And again, you can set up a test class for prime number, and that's really a better way to do it, and then you can just run your tests every time you make changes. But now, as far as the while, I'm going to copy and paste this so we can just compare. I'm going to say copy. Oh, you know what? There's one other thing before I do that. You can actually make this a little more efficient, and I'll let you think about this for a little bit about why this would be the case. You really just need to check for values of I up to the square root of n, up to or equal to, I including the square root of n. So let's just double check that one. 9 should be false. Okay. 23 should be true. And again, you really, to be thorough, you want to run, have a bunch of test cases that you run every time you do these changes. But so now what I'm going to do is copy this and paste it. I'll just rename this one old is prime, and then this way we can compare what's going on. So in your for loop, you have 3 statements inside the header, the parentheses in the header. So you have this initialization statement, you have this test, and then you have a statement. It's usually some kind of increment going on. It's what happens every time you go through the loop. So basically, you have a starting state, then you have a test to see if you're finished looping, and then you have this change that you make every time you go through the loop. You change your state to, and that way you'll eventually your state will change to the point where this will evaluate to false, and you'll fall out of your loop. Okay, so for a while, the way you implement this, and then your for loop has a body. Okay, so for a while, the way you implement this is you start. Your while only has one of these statements. It only has the test statement in it. Okay, so to initialize, cut that out. You do the initialization before the while loop. Okay, and this piece here, we're not going to need that semicolon. This piece here, the incrementing piece, this happens at the end of your for loop. So what you do is stick it at the bottom of the block in the while loop. Okay, and put that as your statement. And so what that means, what happens is, so basically what's happening is exactly the same thing here. So we're initializing our int I equals 2, and that's what we're doing here. Then we test to see if I is less than or equal to the square root of n. That's what we do here. We're doing our testing. Then we go through our block, and then we increment I. And here we're incrementing I basically after we go through the block, because we're sticking it at the end of the block. Okay. So let's compile, close. And test that out on some things. So 16, let's do 12. 12 should be false. And 17 should be true. Cool. Okay, so that's how while loops work and how you compare them with for loops.